Thank you, and welcome to our February 24th meeting of the Commission on Sustainability, Environmental Justice, and the Environment. What we'll do now is a roll call, so why don't we just go around the table and introduce everybody who's here.
James Conway with the Office of Sustainability.
Shannon Perry with the Office of Sustainability.
Clove Galilee with the Office of Sustainability.
Yeah.
And famous woman.
Yeah.
One more time. Great. And I'm Dean Kubani. I'm the chair of the commission.
I'm Ashley Olson. I'm on the commission.
David Pettit, commission member.
Susan Mearns, commission member.
Olivia Walker, commission member.
Judy Abdo, not a commission member, though I would like to be.
Rob Limpert, a commission member.
Why don't we go about, yeah.
Susie Gordito with Sustainable Works.
Gina Garcia, Sustainable Works.
Carl Russ Cotter with Office of Sustainability.
Devin Cipher, citizen and reporter for Santa Monica Daily Press.
Lindsay Call, City Manager's Office of Emergency Management.
Rachel Clark, Environmental Planner, City Planning Division.
Others? You guys don't, you're recording. You can introduce yourself, so if you'd like.
City TV.
Yeah.
Danielle Lee, City TV.
All right. And who's all the way in the back?
I'm Kimmy, I'm your technical director.
Well,
City TV.
fantastic. Well, thank you all. Glad you're all here tonight. We'll start off with public input on non-agenda items. Do we have any public input on non-agenda items?
If you'd like to speak, can you come up to the mic and speak to the mic? Judy, I had that one as maybe, or Robert, yours.
I'm just going to be a little spontaneous at the moment. I was just curious, so I'll throw this out there. I was curious why we're not discussing the situation with soil and air following the fire on the agenda for tonight. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
So, I'm gonna plug in.
Yes. Hold on. Yes, I need to figure out how we do that. Give me a minute. We have Lindsay here to talk about it. Lindsay's availability. We're working on how to give you the information that we have after the agenda went out. So we need to do that in a way that is consistent with the Brown Act, which requires us to only talk about the things that are on the agenda. So we have Lindsay here who is our expert. We're going to figure out the most appropriate way to do it.
All right. Yeah. Take it away, Lindsay.
With Rachel, yeah. Give me a minute.
I'm here whenever.
Was to have Lindsay address
Right.
that during the safety element and hazard mitigation conversation. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to do that now, or do you want to stick with the order that
We
we've
were
got?
thinking that these were faster, like quicker update items, and then we would spend the most time on that.
Okay. Okay, great. So,
We're going to have you go to the safety element as originally planned.
okay.
Okay. Present as part of the safety element and hazard mitigation plan update.
Do I need to?
Great, thank you. So, all right, so our next item is public input on anything special agenda items, which is our update from Sustainable Works, or the consent calendar, which is our only thing on the consent calendar is our minutes from the December 16th meeting. Is there any public input on either of those two items?
Hardwick, come to the microphone.
We called those already, but I'll let you do an open public comment on non-agenda items if you'd like to do that.
Okay. All right, good evening. My name is Harvey Etter. I live in Santa Monica, went to Venice High. My family's been here more than 100 years. I've been involved with this group for 10, 15 years, not recently. I'm the founder and director of the Public Solar Power Coalition, going back 40, 50 years. CCAs, community choice aggregation, etc., munis, co-ops, federal, regional systems. Went to UC, Santa Barbara, Berkeley, Santa Cruz. I was the first environmental studies student in 1970 with Dick Cooley about a living Christmas tree in the White House, which has been purged now. And it was Ruckel's house. First head of EPA was also under. Okay, right now, we got a crisis with Trump. He pulled us out of the climate stuff 4 years ago. We tried to resist this before 1/6, and we were involved. We got run out of court in December of 19. We've been suing the Air District and stuff. There's a sunshot program that's been doing under Obama that started in 10 to make solar cost effective. And we took that to the Air District and carbon stuff, and they had 100 exhibits, and including equity, and they ignored it. They never looked at it. Neither the Air District, CARB, or EPA. It's really outrageous. It was modeled after the moon, the moon shot. That's how we got to the moon. Musk wouldn't be up there now if it wasn't for that. Straight up. And now he's giving Nazi salutes and stuff. And getting the Germans, they got 20%, their Nazi party. He's giving Nazis. My family, half of them was murdered by Hitler. I don't abide by it. And anyway, so the special prosecutor, you all know the issue of the 14th Amendment. 13th Amendment was get rid of, free the slaves. 14th Amendment was go look after the KKK. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want him to be in office, so rather than traitors get a bullet, they said he cannot be in office, Section 3. So 20 states were taking him off the ballot before Super Tuesday, and the Supreme Court shot down the Supreme Courts of Colorado, Illinois, and Maine, and said he has to be on the ballot. He was threatening chaos, and we got chaos. And all the stuff that's going on now. Okay, the special prosecutor, okay, that was in 1870 an enforcement act to enforce the 14th Amendment. All right, but now there's a constitutional center, a nonpartisan, impartial thing, and they had a guy from McClellan from the Hoover Institute, Stanford Law. Okay, on one side, and the other side, Garber or Graber, University of Maryland, that did an amicus brief on the Colorado case. And they said that they were the historians on the 14th Amendment. They said that they got the history wrong, they overwrote, and all this stuff.
Harvey.
And okay, here's the thing.
Harvey, I'm sorry, but your time is up.
I got to say this, okay? We've been going to our representatives here, and they got $25 million to sue. They spent $40 million suing the first 4 years. The state of California. So you go ahead and get the Air District, the budget committees now. And the number one point has to be continuing with a special called 140-page report, 250 witnesses, 55 with the grand jury, a slam dunk.
Okay, Harvey.
Let's wrap it up.
The state of California has to take the lead, and that this group has to get our representatives and our council to do this. We brought it up. This is serious stuff, and we got to act now. People are like they're asleep. Enough, okay?
Thank you, Harvey.
Think about this. And read this, Jack Smith. They purged the Justice Department, they purged education, EPA, etc. Enough. It's time to stand up and be counted.
All right, thank you. Okay, special agenda item, an update from Sustainable Works. Take it away, Susie and Gina.
second. Hi, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to come here and update you about what Sustainable Works is doing. The last time we were here was 2022. We caught you up to there. So we are going to be talking about what we've been up to in 2023 and 2024. My name is Gina Garcia, and I'm co-executive director with Susie Borlito of Sustainable Works. And for those of you who don't know us, we're a nonprofit based in Santa Monica. And we have been working with the city of Santa Monica since 1998, started as the Green Team. So we have 4 programs, well, really 2, but we have a community program where we do our events and film screenings. We manage the Buy Local Santa Monica campaign, and then we have a green business program and Sustainable Quality Awards, and Sustainable Quality Awards is part of the green business program. So I'll be talking to you about our community program, and Susie will be talking to you about Buy Local Santa Monica. So our community program consists of events, usually film screenings and different events, and we do 4 per year. So in 2023 and 2024, those are the 5 films that we screened. We screen the film, and then we have a panel discussion afterwards. Hopefully, if we can get someone from the film, we have them there. We have one of our city experts connected to the topic of the film, as well as other experts that participate. And our 2 biggest screenings this year, the bottom screening is Common Ground, where we had almost 300 attendees at that event. And the top one is Engine Inside, where we had a little over 200 attendees. And our bike valet, that's a picture early on, but later it was just packed with bikes. And so those 5 events, film screenings, we had a total of 797 attendees for all 5 of those events. You know, when you do a single event, it's really hard to see how the impact is. People come, you give them action items. So during our panel discussion, we encourage people to take action, and we list actions they can take. I follow up with a survey, I follow up with an email to remind them, and we get them to commit to 3 actions. But you can't follow people home and see if they're doing what they're doing. So this is what we have for impacts of our, I wish I could. In our green business program, we're right there in the business doing it, but we can't follow them home. But we ask people. You think? Well, hey, it may pass nowadays. So we do the survey, and we ask them to commit to taking 3 actions. This is a survey from Common Ground, and it's really tiny, but the largest is a little over 70% committed to shopping at the local farmers market, and then a little over 60% said they would educate themselves about the Farm Bill, and then a little over 70% also said they would, what was that one? Shop at, no, a little over 60% said that they would compost, start composting. So in addition to the film screenings, we'll do events. Sometimes it's 3 film screenings, 1 event, 2 film screenings, 2 events. We did 4 events in 2023 and 2024. They're listed there. The image on the left is the Sustainable Landscape Open House, and that was at Ishihara Park. We had about 86 people come. It was an opportunity for them to learn about water saving and learn about rebates. We had designers there, about 4 designers, so people could actually come and talk to them and talk about their personal their gardens at home and what they can do to improve them. We had vendors there, and Santa Monica residents got free plants at that event. The one on the right is the Next Gen Climate Summit, and this came out of the idea of the city to do a youth commission, to have youth join the commission, and that was for high school and college students. It was at PS1, and it started with we had tables of organizations that were involved with activism, and then we had a leader activist speak, and then we had breakout sessions, and Walker Wells, he facilitated that. So what we did was broke the students up into small groups, and the first thing was to figure out their vision. What is their vision for a sustainable future? And then they came back, and then they worked on how are they going to get to that vision? What is the roadmap to get there? We were hoping to have 50 students. We had 42 students, but it was really successful, and all the students were really excited about the program. And then the next one is the warming dance event. So a few years ago, I got an email to come to this dance event about COVID. I'm like, how do you do dance and COVID? I don't understand, but I was a dancer in the past, so I went. And it kind of blew me away. It was really interesting. These dancers, they were dancing, but there was also statistics and facts given out in a very poetic way. But a friend of mine brought 2 friends, and they're doing the dance, and I can't breathe, and it was so moving. And when we were done, she's like, oh my God, it brought back all these memories for me of COVID. And it really brought you back. And I'm going to go on a little ran here, but I have found that people don't want to sit in a room and be lectured. People love to go to the movies. They love to go to theater. They love to go to concerts. They love to, do all that stuff. So when I saw this, I thought, well, why don't we do something related to climate change? And that's why our film screenings are very popular, because you connect people doing what they love to do. So this was at Tongva Park, and this is, it's the, oh my God, Donna Sternberg Dancers. So what they did was they did something about climate change and climate warming. If you were more to the left of that picture, you'd actually be looking straight out into the ocean. So the dancers are in front, you see the ocean behind them. And at this particular spot, because they traveled around the park and we followed them, at this particular spot they were dancing. And then they climbed on those little ledges on the side, and then they climbed up on the top, illustrating how the sea level was rising and they had to get out of it. They did a dance, at this park, they have a climbing structure that's yellow and it's really big and it kind of looks like a beehive. And they danced all around it, climbed in, were hanging, there were bees. And as they're going through their dance, slowly and slowly, each one is dying off until I'm saying that, I just started to cry. All the bees, all of them were dead. And then they had another dance where there was a young man with a big plastic bag full of plastic trash, lugging it, dancing around the park, and then his bag breaks and all the plastic is emitted. So it was a really great way to educate people on what we can expect in our environment without a lecture. At the end, there was a Q&A with the dancers and the director, and then we had discussions about what actions people are taking and what they're taking and what they want to take. So it was a really great conversation. We encouraged people to bring their own lunches and snack and hang out there. And then this last event on the right, this was our climate resiliency event, and this was past fall, and this was at the Annenberg Community Beach House, and it started with, and Dean knows this, he was there, 3 small tours led by the Bay Foundation. So they went out and they saw the Dune Project. Then we all came back in, had some delicious food, and then we had a panel discussion with Bonnie Benson. She's the UCLA Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer. She was our moderator. Evelyn Weber was from the Malibu Foundation, and she was talking about microforests and the importance of nature in helping to combat climate change. Tom Ford was there, of course, Bay Foundation, and then we had our City of Santa Monica, Sonny Wang, the Santa Monica Water Resources, and he was the hit of the event. Everyone was asking him most of the questions, but it was a really fun and great event. And then these are just the impacts from that resiliency event. I don't know if you could see it, but 100% of the people who responded, only 10% of the people who I sent the survey to actually responded, but they said they would walk, bike, or take public transportation. And then 80% said they would conserve energy during flex alerts or extreme heat times. And 80% said they'd prepare for emergency with the 3 C's of communicate, coordinate, cooperate, and collaborate. And this is one of my favorite events, is the Sustainable Santa Monica Student Poster Contest. This is in its 17th year. Right now we're doing the 17th year. Back in 2023, our theme was Together, let's create a community full of kindness, dignity, and equity. Last year it was celebrating 30 years of sustainability in Santa Monica. The 4 photos you're gonna see are from that one, the 30 years of sustainability. These are all the grand prize winners. The photo on the left is kindergarten through 2nd grade, and the photo on the right is 3rd through 5th grade. So over the past 2 years, I've done a total of 83 presentations, and we've received 996 poster submissions, and we've reached over 2,100 students. Not all the students who I present to do posters. And then these are, the one on the left is the middle school poster, and the one on the right is the high school poster. It's really fun, and there's amazing artwork out there. And then it ends, so we come up with a theme, I go into classrooms and teach about the subject, we judge the posters, we display the posters, so mainly they're displayed for the public to see at the main library, but we've had different places in the past, and this year's theme is about community gardens and gardening, and we're thinking of displaying the posters at the farmer's market, but that's a work in progress. But this is from last year. Over the last 2 contest celebrations, we've had 187 total attendees, students, teachers, families, principals. The top photo is last year's winner, and the bottom photo is just everyone present at the event to hear speakers and see the award, appreciate the awardees. And then the last thing I do is oversee the Buy Local Santa Monica campaign. And our main 2 goals for this is to expand participation and support the businesses. So in the last 2 years, we've had 161 new businesses join Buy Local. And we support the businesses in a few ways. One is through our newsletters, and we have 2 newsletters that go out, and typically it's once a month except in the summer. Our Buy Local business newsletter reaches over 1,100 subscribers, and the Friends of Buy Local newsletter has a subscription of over 6,700 subscribers. And these 2 pictures are from our spotlights. So what we do in our newsletter, we have a resource section where we give businesses resources. In January, it was full of resources for the fires. We have events that our partners like Santa Monica Travel and Tourism, the Chamber, have that businesses could participate in. And we have a spotlight section. So Ivania, one of our staff, she reaches out to businesses that are really strong supporters of Buy Local, really get involved, and she asks them to give us a little blurb on them so we could put them in and spotlight them. So these are just a few that we've had in the past. And then the other ways we support them and give them more notoriety is through our 'Tis the Season to Buy Local campaign, which is in the fall, in the holiday season. We reach out to businesses to ask them to give us gift ideas that they have. Typically, the themes are a sustainable product, obviously, and a product like an item that's on a budget under $25. And the first 10 to 12 businesses that respond, they get their ad in the Santa Monica Daily Press holiday edition, which is on the top right. But everyone gets promoted that submits through Instagram. And then the bottom picture is from our Most Loved campaign. Unfortunately, you don't have to be a Buy Local business to participate, but community votes on their favorite businesses. And in the last 2 years, over 130,000 there were over 130,000 votes. It's changing this year because in the past, I like to talk with my hands. In the past, we had a nomination phase and then a voting phase. No more nomination phase. We're just going straight to voting, which is happening right now. And you can vote on your favorite businesses up until March 14th. You can only vote once this time. In the past, you can vote multiple times. You can only vote once, and you have to vote in 5 categories. And I think I've talked enough, and I'm going to turn it over to Susie. Yeah, just hit this right.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Susie, the co-executive director with Gina of Sustainable Works. I talk loud, so I'll try to not talk so loud. So since we've been offering the Green Business Program in Santa Monica since 2001, and I've been here since 2001, so 24 years and going. The program is a 3 to 6 month process. These are the phases. Generally, we assess businesses on site. If it's COVID, we figured out how to do it virtually. We generate an action plan for them, help them implement it. We guide them through the process to achieve the criteria to become a green certified business. And like all of our programs, we focus on the 6 resource areas at the bottom there: water, energy, pollution prevention, waste, transportation, and procurement. So since 2001, we have, out of those 454 businesses, I think I said, we've certified 274. Our certification rate is between 60 and 70% out of all businesses that enroll. Just life happens or stuff happens and not all of them can achieve the criteria, but a good 60, 70%. That's since 2007. We only introduced the certification process in 2007, just to complicate it a little bit more. That's when we joined the statewide Green Business Network. Since 2007, that's when we started keeping track of numbers better. We've educated around 42,000 employees. Here's a little snapshot of what we did last year, just to give you a general sense. We enroll about 24 businesses a year in the program. Last year, 17 of them certified, so there's your about 70%, I think. We did start tracking DEI owned businesses, around 2020, 2021. So last year, 5 were BIPOC-owned businesses. And I hope you can see those numbers there, but these are the sectors we enrolled last year. We enroll a lot of food service, restaurant, hotel, office retail, schools. So there's a little snapshot of what sectors were enrolled and how many employees from those sectors total. So last year we reached over 580 employees. Okay, and that's one of the businesses there. Oh, and there's Back on the Beach, one of our long-time, that was just last week. They recertified, I think, for the 4th time. So there's Fred there, and Paint Lab, a business we just certified last year as well. Okay, so the Green Business Program is, now all of the Green Business Programs that are funded by jurisdictions, they all fall under the California Green Business Network. The CAGBN, I'll make it easier, they operate a database that I think now 52 jurisdictions in the state of California have and offer a free green business program to, it's either city funded or county funded. So 52, the network is really growing. We all communicate with each other, make sure we're on the same page. We all help each other out. Ranges from Mammoth all the way down to Long Beach offer programs. And in the last couple of years, the CAGBN, they managed to offer rebates up to $500 for any business, up to $1,000 for BIPOC owned. Sadly, those funds are now exhausted, so this year we do not have them. But in the last 2 years, I thought it'd be interesting to show you, how much money businesses got in rebates. We also, through grants that we, as a nonprofit, get through CAGBN, we were able to waive the program fees for the certification. And so that's just a little snapshot of the last 2 years, how we've helped businesses, just some money there. Okay, and moving along. Oh, and here's an example of a lot of rebates were used for LED retrofits. Utilities no longer, except for LADWP, but Edison no longer funds LED retrofits for free. If you haven't done it by now, it's they don't cover that. So a few businesses that missed out on doing that previously, use the rebate to upgrade their LEDs. Okay, the beauty about this database and the Green Business Network is that we have a database and we input how many fluorescent lights were changed, how many toilets we retrofitted to high efficiency. We can track a lot of metrics. And there's a snapshot from, we officially started using the CAGBN started gathering metrics in 2017. So that's the only, I'm able to generate reports since 2017. And there's some numbers there to show you the impacts we've made. GHG emissions, electricity saved, solid waste saved, water saved, etc. Based annually. Combined numbers. Okay, and the last thing I'll talk about is Sustainable Quality Awards. We've been offering this award program since 1995, so we're coming up to 29 years because we skipped a year because of COVID. But it's an annual business event. Shannon and I have been doing this and Dean helped start this program with James Bassett. So, wow, it's still happening.
I'm not even that old, am I?
No.
Still happening. So the awards are given in the 3 pillars of sustainability, economic development, equity, and environment. Businesses can apply in 1 category or 2 or 3. If they apply in all 3 categories and win, they win the grand prize. So some numbers here from the last couple years, but in total since 1995, 96, we've issued 230 awards to over 173 businesses. Businesses can apply more than once. Within, every year. So we've awarded many awards to the same business. And I'd say 70% of the winners, I think that number is actually more, they enrolled in our program first, but it's not required to do Green Business Program first before the Sustainable Quality Awards. And this is just an annual event. It's a great event just to recognize our sustainable business leaders. And the next one's coming up April 30th. I think applications are due this Wednesday.
Susie, can I say one thing about that?
Yeah.
Just for the folks who aren't aware of it, the Sustainable Quality Awards, there's a pretty rigorous requirement to win an award. It's not like you recycle a little bit and you get an award. When we started in 1995, we thought we had pretty high standards, and now it's like every year they ratchet them up. So companies that have won multiple awards, it's not just they keep getting an award because they're doing the same thing, but they're really upping their game. So the businesses that win awards now are kind of some of the best businesses around. You know, it's the best businesses in the state, I would say.
Yeah, well, Patagonia just won last year, but the last time they won was 2006, I think, and then they applied again. So yeah, businesses tend to not, the grand prize winners also aren't allowed to apply. They have to wait 5 years to apply again. We don't want to keep honoring the same businesses over and over again. That's the Sustainable Quality Award, and I think I'm done. And so if you have any questions, we are here. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, guys. I'll open it up to commissioners. David.
Hi, I have a question about the sustainable company program. When you're analyzing a company to see if it gets the green designation, what consideration do you give to their supply chain, where stuff comes from?
That is a good question. So to clarify, we have 3 judges per category. Each judge, we try to get a judge that represents the city, a judge that represents the community, and a judge that represents an educational institution like Santa Monica College or something. So for procurement, we look at do they buy locally? And then we look at do they purchase for paper, for example? Are they purchasing recycled content paper? We ask about their cleaning chemicals, if they give preference to third-party verified green chemicals that are Safer Choice rated, Green Seal. I actually work with Carl Brustcotter. Carl is my city counterpart. He actually goes on visits with me for the Green Business Program. I digress. So based on what I learned from Carl, we apply that to the Sustainable Quality Award. So we ask businesses about office supplies and cleaners, pest management, mostly. Does that answer your question?
Pretty much. I also have an interest in a couple other things maybe you could address very briefly. One is the transportation. How do they get stuff? Is it shipped from China? Is it, delivered by diesel truck from the Inland Empire, whatever? Yeah, I guess that'll do that. If you could just respond to that one.
For transportation, we focus more on how employees get to work. The GoSamo, we make sure that they're in compliance with GoSamo. We focus more on that. It's a volunteer application. So some judges, they may ask, for Patagonia, for example, they may ask, where do you source? If it's a company like that. But most of the businesses that apply, some of them often don't have a product, it's just a service. But the judges, they do ask about that when it does apply.
And I'll just add that Susie talked about 2 different things. One is the Sustainable Quality Awards and the other is the Green Business Certification Program. And we can make a point of sending out the California Green Business Network website so you can look a little bit at their statewide criteria, and then we can send a copy of our checklist so you can see how that broader supply chain and sustainable procurement is integrated across a couple of product areas. Okay. And then I think same thing for when you're thinking about ultimately carbon emissions and air quality impacts for transportation, which I think is ultimately the question you're asking.
Yeah, it is. When you think about all the diesel that has gone into getting this from China into my pocket, it's really insane.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about the insanity as we think about other funding projects in the city. I think that I think you'll see primarily the way that the California Green Business Network, our Green Business Certification Program, get at that is through local hiring and local procurement is kind of the way to get that at this scale. But you will see, as Susie mentioned, that the Sustainable Quality Awards have judges from the city, the chamber, and the community.
Usually an educational institution, usually.
And they differentiate the businesses by size, and the larger size businesses, that's often a question that is included in the application and that the judges ask for additional documentation around. Yeah. But it's not there are some elements of both the Green Business Certification Program that are prerequisites, and documentation of your supply chain is not a prerequisite.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Any other questions for Gina or Susie from the commissioners? No? Okay, let's
Okay.
Good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. We appreciate
Sheena,
it.
do you want Okay, we're good? Okay. We're not gonna touch it. No. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you. And so the next item is the consent calendar, which is just the approval of the minutes from the December 16th meeting. Would any commissioner like to make a motion? Susan? Susan Mearns moves to approve the minutes. Oh, I think Ashley beat you to it. You got to be quick around here. So we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion? Oh, okay, all in favor? Aye. Looks like that passes unanimously. Great. We're moving right along. So we're into public input on the remaining agenda items. Those 3 items are an integrated pest management update, the Metropolitan Water District update, and the safety element and hazard mitigation plan. Is there any public input on any of those 3 items? Looks like Harvey. Come on up. How many minutes do you have? 3 minutes.
Howdy, I'm Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself. I actually don't need right now. And individuals. The last thing about risk, there is we're up to 2 o'clock in the morning. The city council, they have a risk element, safety element. Mm-hmm. It's required in general plans now, all right? Included in that is climate, okay, and earthquakes, all right? So we talked on this, and I wanted to see, like they said, the 30 years planning, the discussions they had. They said there was a 95% probability of a 6.7 earthquake in the next 30 years. They didn't say in discussion, we brought up that there was an 8.3 at Fort Tejon in 1857. It's 170 years ago. It's way overdue. Been going 3,000 years. All right? Okay. San Francisco had an 8 quake in 1906. PG&E just put in their gas lines. The city burnt to the ground. All right? We just had these fires. These fires are climate related. All right, this 80 to 100 mile an hour winds, that's not going away. It's probably going to get worse. We're going to have several months where that happens. And if we have that earthquake and the fires all around here, we also brought up that the city was supposed to work. They had a joint thing with the fire department of LA. An old friend of mine's dad was a fireman. He built a bomb shelter in his backyard. We didn't find out. Anyway, this is what we got to do. It's extremely important. It's got to be done now, and in conjunction with this, and we got to call out. And at the same time, there's a federal implementation plan. We've never met for ozone PM, and the feds are coming down, and we've been involved in this. And they say it's only taking away transportation. The guidelines have opened for everything, all federal money, and what's happening now, anything goes. All right, so we want to bring that to y'all, and that our comments and other comments made in reference to this, and that we'd like to see a subcommittee of this group. How are you dealing with climate and this? And this is a specific thing to our area. And we're doing a shout out, and I'd like to hear some kind of feedback. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Harvey. Okay, so first up is Carl Bruscutter, IPM update.
It's doing something weird. It's not. One moment, sorry, technical issue. Let's see if this opens. What's opening? It's not sure. Do you need the
Okay, yeah. While we're waiting for Carl, Shannon's gonna do item 7A.
This is a reminder that anyone who serves on a board or commission is required to do their sexual harassment or I think they have to do both or just workplace violence, all three.
There's three. I know exactly who has and who hasn't, but I don't know if we need to announce that.
We're not going to publicly shame you all on the record. This is a judgment-free space. Actually, we do a lot of drinking here, but we don't drink it at people. The reminder is, if you are a commission member, you probably have somewhere between 1 and 3 required trainings that you need to complete. Technically, they are already due, and so we would appreciate your attention to them because we get a daily email reminding us that you haven't. And I would love to stop getting that email personally. It is become the first thing that I am asked about in a number of meetings. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that means you probably don't use your SANDLIFE.gov email, which is the one that you were given for this commission, which means you probably haven't even seen the link and don't even know what I'm talking about. If that's the case, I think Sloan and I will develop a strategy because I've seen a lot of smiling and head nodding, meaning that most of you are not using it. I would probably make a recommendation to go into that email address and simply forward it, have it forward to your primary email address, because the other thing that you get in there is a lot of really good city information from our city manager, from our department heads, etc. So it's our way of keeping you in the loop. So I would recommend finding that email address. It is your first name, not your last name, at SANDLIFE.gov. And then we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, Shannon.
Okay, good evening. My name's Carl Bruscotter. I'm with the Office of Sustainability, and one of the hats I wear is I facilitate the Integrated Pest Management Program for the city, and I've been doing that for about 24 years. So I know there's some new commission members in here. It's good to see you. And mine's pretty short, my presentation, so I might get you back on track pretty well. It's interesting, I was putting this presentation together, and the date was actually the exact same date, but 2020, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm like, wow, I was here on February 24th, 2020. It wasn't the last time, though. Okay, this works. What? Yeah. Well, we can't do slideshow, just to let you know. So I'm doing the slides like this because the thing won't go to slideshow. So that's why you're getting this visual of it. So the city has what they call an IPM, administrative instruction. If you're not familiar, an administrative instruction, it's not like an ordinance. It's more like an internal policy and procedure. And you can see sort of the description of what IPM is. Again, we try to handle and manage pests with the lowest toxicity pesticides we can get, and then a lot of other strategies. And the reason I'm here, the administrative instruction requires me to come here about every 2 years to give a report. Okay. I'm showing you this slide. I've showed this slide this is probably the slide I showed in 2020, right? And the reason I'm showing it to you is because we don't use any Roundup now. It was one of probably arguably the biggest win in IPM for our program was getting away from Roundup. So it was a huge deal. And we used to actually have numbers that we were trying to make on reduction in the volume of certain pesticides. And once we got rid of the Roundup, I mean, we met all our goals right there, which was terrific.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the last year that it was used?
About 2019? They probably used some in 2020, but it was around there. And then this is the machine. Now they use a steamer. It uses hot steam and foam to kill the weeds. This is kind of what it looks like. And I'll tell you, Roundup works really well. And I can tell you that anytime I go to public landscape, they don't like me over there. They really don't like me over there. And I joke, but they don't like me over there. So they really miss their Roundup. And every time I'm there, like, Carl, are we done with this? Can we get our Roundup back? Or, this? And I'm like, no, you can't. So structural pest control. So there's sort of the landscape part of it. And then there's the structural pest control. So landscape pest control, which again is like Roundup, it's a whole different body that regulates it. It's the California Department of Pesticide Regulations, and then the local, what they call the agricultural commissions, are the ones that are over that. Structural pest control is also through California Department of Pesticide Regulation, and then they have structural pest control boards that see over that. So really quick, we have a single vendor for the most part that we use to manage structural pests. The pests that we have the most often are the Argentine ant, cockroaches, and rodents, and you can see some of the areas that we have challenges there. We even have a challenge across the street on the first floor at City Hall East, and it's because people, one thing, anytime there's ever a rodent problem, you can be sure someone's leaving food out somewhere. It's always like, no, we're not leaving food anywhere. We're really good at that. You're just like, oh, well, what's that cereal? Oh, they like cereal? Yeah, they like cereal. They like everything. And then some of the strategies we use are exclusion, crack and crevice treatments are really low exposure treatments. They do stuff like that on the big blue bus. If they see cockroaches, it's where they put like a gel in sort of out of the way places where the people won't come in contact it, and then the bug or the cockroach will come in contact with it and they'll die. And then landscape. So landscape right now, so we have an approved pesticide product list, right? And on that, we break the pesticides out into different tiers based on how their toxicity and how hazardous they are. And the tier 1 are the most hazardous, and they're the ones that are the most priority for replacement with a safer chemical. And you can see the number here is 4. The number here is for 2024, and we use an herbicide called Ronstar, and then we use a fungicide called Daconil. Most of the use there was out at the some of the parks by along the bluff and out that way, and then at the Bowling Green. They use a lot of chemicals just to keep the Bowling Green bowlable. And then on the tier 2, we use some ground squirrel bait, and then we use Delta Dust, and that's kind of like moderate toxicity. And the main use for that was out at the bluff as well, and it's because of the ground squirrel problem out there. And so anybody that's new to this, the ground squirrel issue at the bluffs has been an issue ever since I got here, and we're regulated by the public health department to control the ground squirrels, because the ground squirrels end up getting fleas, which the public health department is afraid it's going to transmit the plague. So that's why we're under all these orders to treat the squirrels, and the Delta Dust is for the fleas. And then the last one is tier 3. We use some rodenticide to control rodents at places where we can't do exclusion. So that might be like the city yards. It might be other places like that. So here's the pesticide product list. I put them up here. It's probably, I'm sure it's too hard to read, but if anybody wants this list and wants to go through it, I'm happy to provide it. Yeah, some of these slides really changed around. It's funny how different systems work. Anyway, it's good enough. We just recently we tried. We've had an ongoing rodent issue at the community gardens, especially Main Street, and we tried to do. What you can do is like a mass trapping thing where you put out a bunch of mechanical traps, which isn't always done outside. It's just the snap trap, right? Old school. And we use that, and we used Orkin as a special kind of pilot project to do a mass trapping. And they honestly, they overcharged and under-delivered. It wasn't a great pilot project. I'd say it was definitely a failure, but that's what pilot projects are. You learn from them and you adjust. And again, so the big wins for sure, getting away from Roundup. Another big win is what has happened with the anticoagulants that were used as a rodenticide and negatively affect predators like raptors, coyotes, stuff like that. And that's pretty much it. So if anybody has any questions or clarifications.
Thanks, Carl. Questions on behalf of commissioners? I actually have a few if other folks don't. So when you were showing the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, were those just 3 examples of the types of chemicals that are on the list, or were those ones that we're actually using?
Actually used.
We are.
Yeah.
Have we used when you mentioned where we're using the tier 1 chemicals, those are those in areas where people go?
No. For the most part, no. They're sometimes used in areas where they have been. I think they might have been used at a sports field, but then it's only when the sports field they have it locked and gated for like a month or whatever after, in some other areas.
Oh, for the bowling green, you mean?
No, for sports fields.
Oh.
Do you mind going back to that slide, please?
Sure.
I also wanted to just let you all know that we will send this presentation out to you tomorrow.
Okay, great. So we used last year 50 pounds of Ronstar herbicide was used?
Yeah, for the whole year at different locations around landscape. But again, we never do any of this at all in the parks or the playgrounds where kids are, anything like that.
Right.
We don't do the applications at all.
Okay, because that's where I was confused, because you mentioned that you were using that stuff in the parks, which was...
Or in the bluffs,
Yeah.
I think is
I
what you
should
said.
say, landscaped areas, but
not
parks where little kids are playing.
So for instance, Palisades Park, it's just the bluff itself and not the park.
Well, I don't, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Bluff, it's down there. And the other question I had was, I don't think it may not have been clear to folks, but basically the city phased out all of its use of Roundup, but also any kind of rodenticides with anticoagulants several years ago, I think. Yeah. Have you seen, now that you have this approved products list, have you seen a reduction in the amount of chemical pesticides that we're using through the IPM program?
You know what's funny? I actually left a page out. It's actually 4 pages long. And again, happy to provide it if you want to peruse through it. But I would say there's a few that I need to remove. And again, they're on there. They're like in your toolkit. It doesn't mean that we're going to use it every year, but it's in the toolkit if they want to use it.
Right. But you're tracking how much is used every year?
I don't for the structural. I do for landscape. Landscape, people, when they do an application in the landscape environment, they're required to submit a pesticide use report. So it's really easy for me to get. I just ask them for the reports that they already have to give to the Agricultural Commission, and then they just give it to me.
Right. So have you seen over the years in landscaping a reduction in the use of chemical pesticides in the city over recent years?
You mean not that isn't Roundup?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Ronstar has trended down a little bit. Yeah, and then, But for the ground squirrels, no, I mean, that whole thing just keeps, the ground squirrel
Right.
thing keeps ebbing and flowing.
Okay, well, so my recommendation in the future, it would be great to hear, I know the purpose of the IPM program is to minimize or eliminate the use of harmful chemical
Yeah.
pesticides. So it'd be great to see what the trends are. You had that great graph of Roundup use
Right.
declining to nothing, but it'd be good to see overall how the program's working towards minimizing and eliminating all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I take anything more away from landscape maintenance people, you guys are going to have to
Right.
give me some armor for when I go over
Yeah.
there. Maybe a security detail, if that would be okay.
Understood.
But yeah, I'll keep working on it.
All
Sure.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Well, and the thing is, you're reporting to us, and if we see like certain types of herbicide use go up,
Yeah.
we can ask questions and give you some support.
Sure.
So
sure.
that's the purpose of the whole.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions, comments, Susan?
So the ground squirrel bait, what are we killing the ground squirrels?
Yeah.
And we're killing the ground squirrels because they have fleas.
Yeah.
And has anybody done the statistics regarding the potential for the fleas on the ground squirrels and the Palisades bluffs to carry the bubonic plague?
You know, I don't have information on that exactly, but I mean, that kind of stuff comes, there's a division called vector control. So it's a vector control people with the public health departments that really get involved in that because, again, like you said, it's a transmittable infectious disease, of course, plague. And so when they did the last study as far as what the risk is and killing the ground squirrels, I could look into it, but I don't really have any good information for you.
So it's LA County Public Health?
Yeah, yeah.
And Susan, the issue is this has a lot of history in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
I mean, way back when I was first starting out, there was issues with this. The city moved away from killing the ground squirrels because there was a public uproar, I don't know, 2 decades ago, and went towards birth control for a while, which didn't work it wasn't very effective, and it was very expensive.
We tried it for
And
pigeons
I mean,
as
there
well.
there were all sorts of different options for trying to
Yeah.
control the squirrels, and basically the city was required by the county public health department
Yeah.
to make sure there weren't ground squirrels in the parks.
Yeah, and they're just very hard to maintain too because, you know, they're on the bluff, which is not stable. You can't send people in there to do any, you know, exclusion, which wouldn't work anyway, or put traps in there of any kind. It's a really challenging area, you know what I mean? And then there's plenty of food, it's open, it's.
So I can't figure out the exposure pathway by which the flea that has the plague is on the ground squirrel and the ground squirrel's on the bluff, which is not stable.
Yeah.
And then the flea bites the human
Yeah.
who is not on the bluff because they're not allowed to be on the bluff.
Well, the little squirrels come in and they come in and get the food. There's people feeding them out there all the time. There's plenty of squirrels all over
So
the
the
park.
habitat is primarily
squirrels
on the
are
bluff, and the treatment locations are lower on the bluff, but the squirrels themselves are being cared
burrows
for
on the bluff.
by
So-
kind-hearted residents and visitors who prefer to feed them. And so, amongst other things. And so there is a broader habitat than you would normally expect for a ground squirrel.
Ashley?
I just have a question. So is there like an ideal population number that we're working around when we're trying to decide exactly what kind of, you know, ground squirrel bait will be set out? Like, is there like... above or below this number is our threshold?
You know, I could look into it. I actually don't know that either. I don't know if there's a threshold. I don't know how they count them. Again, they're hard to count. You know, they come up and again, they're getting food and then they can run.
I've seen them.
But no, I could try and.
I was just wondering, like, how do you make a determination on what the population is of San Juan? 'Cause
My understanding, and Chris, you could perhaps correct me since you're also involved in this, you know.
It's more a curiosity question than a necessity.
I think ultimately we do not count them, and I don't know that there is a target population, but there is a required practice to maintain the population, not only for the potential of plague transmission, but also because the squirrels were destabilizing the bluff itself. And so, so for both of those reasons.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I haven't been involved in a couple of years in it, but that's where we left it.
Yeah.
So-
I remember it was the city would periodically be notified by LA County Public Health and or vector control that the population was too large and needed to be knocked down.
Yeah. And then we would get fined if we didn't, you know, do the controls.
Right.
So it's arbitrary.
I don't know if it's arbitrary or not. I'm just saying the city is notified by public health. They may have some sort of criteria.
Counting mechanism.
I don't know. Yeah.
We can look into what triggers them notifying us. I don't know.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
And
so
and
I think we're kind of going off.
Yeah, I get it, but the bait is lower on the bluff, but any mammal could access the bait. So in theory,
No.
The baits they're highly regulated now. There's all sorts of restrictions on who can put them there, how far they can be away from certain things. They have to be in locked containers.
They're boxed baits.
Boxes. They're hard plastic. They're labeled. There's all sorts of regulations.
so how does the ground squirrel get into a locked plastic
There's a hole.
box?
There's a hole for it, and then there is a food that they're attracted to that draws them in.
Got it. Thank you.
Got it. All right. I'll entertain one more question and then we'll move on.
So again, it's a vector control question. They probably are assuming that. Yeah, they're probably assuming that if there's any potential at all. Again, you know, the plague, it's kind of, you know, can put a little fear in people when you bring up that term. So, yeah. So I assume that that's the way they're looking at it, yeah.
So this particular herbicide usage is or rodenticide. This one, rodenticide is one that we use because when we are informed that we have to. So I think we're asking Carl to speculate in places that are actually slightly outside his area of expertise. But what we can do is get some information from our regulators and report back to you. So that
Great.
we're giving you accurate information that's the most up to date.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
All right. So what's that? Our next item is Metropolitan Water District update. Mark Gold.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Yay.
Yeah.
It's always weird coming back here.
Yeah.
It's only 30 years.
Yeah. Welcome back, Mark.
We know you miss us.
Yeah, I kind of do. Can't be on two things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But so the two big things that met, you know, if you remember my tirade last time, that came to a close. You know, I can't go into grisly detail about it. But at the end of the day, Adel Haj Khalil was fired without cause. It was among the most awful things I've ever had to deal with professionally. And it's not just because I have a 25 plus year working relationship with Adele Hajj Khalil. It's because of just how awful, things were said that were just reprehensible, and, people just went back on their word like left and right. And at the end of the day, there was just frankly no chance to keep him. My own personal opinion is that was, and I think Judy and I even talked about it before she left, was that this is exactly how it was going to end, which was he was going to be fired without cause because they couldn't find enough cause to fire him with cause. By dragging it out as long as it all lasted, that, the argument of, he's got to go for the good of the organization became a lot more powerful to many people who were, might have been on the fence, 7 months earlier. And inevitably, I'm sure Adele will come back and sue for wrongful termination and accuse MWD of racism, which was also in the paper. I'm sure you guys saw that's something that I can talk about because there was a censor, and it was actually done publicly of member Morris from San Marino, using anti-Middle Eastern slurs, describing another, actually the chief of staff, at a field trip overnighter that had occurred. So, and there's other accusations of other things even worse than that had occurred. So, so what do you do after that? What do you do if you have 7 months of just, divisive, vitriol, closed sessions where you just you're about to lose it because you just can't believe that things that you take for granted, like morals and ethics, are shared by others, and they're just not. And I think everybody in this room who knows me knows I didn't shut up, So I called everybody on their stuff, and it just didn't matter. It just didn't matter. The city of LA was good, because the final vote was public, so you could sort of see what that was. San Diego did not, in the end, support, but that had more to do with, them not jeopardizing a pending agreement to ongoing litigation that's gone on for about a decade, than anything else, because they had been supportive of Adele the entire way until the very, very last vote. So the replacement was, really obvious, and some of you know him. Obviously, you know him very well, both of you two. Devin Aputier. He's kind of Switzerland. He's very, very solid. He's respected by all.
What's his name?
Devin Aputier. I'm probably mispronouncing the last name. I swear I've heard it pronounced in 30 different ways. Devin wanted to retire. So he absolutely positively wanted out by December. And because he's been there for so long and out of loyalty to the organization, he said he would stick it out for a year, try to get the organization back in shape, so that someone in their right mind who's actually good might actually apply for the job. Because I don't know who, that place is so dysfunctional, it's unbelievable. And the reality is the people who brought, a lot of the complaints, they were rewarded. The person's gone, and nothing happened to them. And so it's a strange world. And for those of you who know me, because I fall on my sword on all things moral and ethical, to just see that people can be accused and you're basically guilty until proven innocent, and even then it doesn't matter. That's just really, really hard for me to swallow. If Adele had done a lot of what he was accused of doing, I would have done the right thing and voted for him to go. I absolutely would have, but that's just not how it all went down. So anyways, so what happens now? I can tell you what claims to be is going to happen is that, okay, because one of the things that I had put together was a list of reforms that were solely needed that came out through this entire process, right? And I'm not going to go in grisly detail, but to give you an example, it was funny, I've worked with, you guys forever, Dean, since you first started.
Right.
And I don't know what Santa Monica does in this situation, which is, so if you have a personnel complaint, are your only choices to basically go to an ethics officer or to an attorney? Okay, there's no ombudsperson function at all.
There's a personnel board in the city.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We don't have that at Met. Right? I mean, just basic stuff. Like I'm used to UCLA, right? We have an ombudsperson.
Right.
If there's something that goes wrong, you go to the ombudsperson and they deal with it, and they basically have mediation skills and trying to make it work. And that just wasn't there. And so that function doesn't exist there. And so that's just an example of something that is pretty amazing. I know a lot of you deal with labor. We have 4 different unions at Met, and 2 on each side, and they hate each other's guts. And they sue each other left and right. They say stuff that you wouldn't say about your worst enemy, in public comment. And we're just sitting here going like, this place is a dumpster fire. And, so it's stuff like that. When I was in my first term, and you can say what you want about Jeff Keitlinger, he kept that part buttoned up. So it doesn't mean that the wars weren't happening, but they never made it to the board. And now it's like half-hour public comment every time is, a list of people in this union versus a list of people in that union, and talking about which leader they hate the most. Sometimes it's Adele, sometimes it's other staff, and it's just like, so that's the culture of the place. And so there's just a lot going on, and as I have said many times, it is nothing short of a miracle that they're able to provide high quality, affordable water 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It is a miracle to me that they can do it, and the reality is because there's a lot of talented people there. I'm not going to tell you that they don't have talent, and a lot of great engineers who do amazing work, but that's basically the culture that we have. And so we'll see what happens there. Don Ortega, who's the chair of the board, says he's going to try to deal with it and create a subcommittee and throw me on there because he knows I'll whine about it either way. So he may as well bell the cat and have me engaged. And so that's what's happening there. There's new committee chairs that are basically the old committee chairs. There's basically no change whatsoever. So Don has kept pretty much everything the same. I think the only changes on the one water committee, the subcommittees dealing with Bay Delta and the Colorado, I think are going to be dissolved. And then it'll be sort of like an imported water subcommittee, and I'll be put on that. Whether I chair it or not is another thing. I can't imagine them being foolish enough to have me chair, but that is something that has been said, was that they'd have me chair that, and I'm going like, there's no way they follow up on that commitment. It would be entertaining for all.
Yeah.
If
I'd
we
come
do
to
go
those
that route.
meetings.
And so then I'll close with the last thing, which is the climate action plan. And Liz Crossan, who many of you know, she was the former LA waterkeeper, did a great job there. and then she worked for Mayor Garcetti when he was there, in the sustainability office, and then in the mayor's office, rising to deputy mayor for infrastructure. I just think the world of her, and the fact that she decided to go work for Met, literally to work for Adele. That was literally the reason that she took that. She could have had jobs anywhere because she's that extraordinary. And so she's still there. She should be promoted to be an assistant GM. I think that would be the only way to really keep her there. It doesn't feel like that's something Devin would do. And so that's unfortunate unless maybe the board sort of presses on that, but you don't really like the board pressing on personnel decisions, et cetera. But the drafts of what's been coming out are really good. And so if any of you are completely bored and want to take a look at some of the tech memos and the annual report and the like, we've done so much here in this committee on literally setting national trends with the first ever sustainable city plan, and redoing it 3 times, and the like. And the one thing we always struggled with here, and we tried here, right? I mean, we created a culture of accountability. I don't know why that's not back again, but the report cards, I think, were useful. And it's the implementation side when you put these plans together. And invariably, people don't put together implementation plans when they put together a climate action plan, or they put together a sustainable city plan, or they, a Green New Deal, City of LA, or the Our County plan for LA County. Those are plans that, I had the opportunity to work on all of those. And I'm really proud of what was put together and the small role I played in that. But, it's always the implementation side that just always killed me. Because if you don't have the implementation set, then you can get a new mayor come in, Mayor Bass, and then the Green New Deal is like, it's not my Green New Deal, and so implementation of that is like, not really a priority for me. And so it's just not getting implemented in the city of LA. So what's different about Met is that more of the work's going into how to actually implement the plan than really the setting and the metrics, the goal setting and the metrics. And the goal setting and metrics are pretty good. They might not be as bold as maybe people around this table might come up with. But you got to realize the history of that agency is they're dinosaurs. And so for them to even go that route's a big deal. And then to have this implementation where literally every significant policy, every single project will be reviewed for consistency for the climate action plan. Does that sound familiar? Remember how we tried to get that done here and we never got it done? What we were trying to say, for you newcomers, was the sustainable city plan. We try to have that same exact policy occur here in the city, where every major decision, every major development would have to be determined whether or not it was consistent with the sustainable city plan. And it got shot down by council. Not to mention city managers and others. Yeah, no, I bring it up hopefully to make you guys think that just because it didn't happen before, it doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea. And so that long-winded explanation is just to say that, what Liz is getting done and with those consultants, if it happens, there'll be nothing like that anywhere else at another major water utility in the country to do that. And that doesn't mean they're going to become the greenest utility. Let's be real. But what it does mean is that there'll have to be a level of review that doesn't just blow off environmental concerns. I know David's going, yeah, that's called CEQA.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's literally would be implemented on a day-to-day basis on, policies and projects that normally wouldn't rise to the level of having a separate CEQA review, I think could be pretty extraordinary. And so the thing, and I wish Sonny was here for this, was that I think he plays as big a role on this as I do. I think he's highly, highly respected in that group, and he needs to push to make sure that the other heads of utilities, the member agencies, the staffers who are actually doing the work as opposed to us who naval contemplate, is on board with it, because there's definitely significant pushback from a lot of the individual agencies about that they don't want this stuff to apply. And so that's what I would urge the city to do. And I can call Sonny up too. But I hope if you have the chance to talk to him, make it clear that that's a huge need for Santa Monica, and that's a huge need for California. For that to occur, is to make sure it doesn't get rolled.
We can do that. We can put that in the minutes. We can also reach out to him, but also just for you to put a pin in, he is coming to present in March. So if that's still timely, would be a good time to also.
I think it's actually, what's the date in March? 17th. Was it 17th?
You all want to spend your St. Patrick's Day here, right?
It's really close. It's really close to the date where I think it goes to Met for approval. So I'll have to double check.
Can you, keep us posted, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, because that might, because normally it would be March 11th or something, or I don't know, would be the Met meeting. And if that's true, maybe it'll get pushed back to April. I'll need to double check and get you the right dates. But if that timing works, that'd be great.
If that timing doesn't work, do you want to have a climate action plan, MWD climate action plan subcommittee that comes together one time to prioritize that?
It would be good, or I was actually planning to call Sonny tomorrow about something else, and I can talk to him.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Which I don't know that we need to have a subcommittee, but
Just want to give you the option.
Yeah.
What influence or leverage does Santa Monica in the implementation have on the other member agencies?
It's because it's Sunny.
Okay.
It's not because it's Santa Monica.
Okay.
It's because Sunny is that highly respected. And so it's one of those things where, I mean, I'll tell you, one of the other people who's most influential in that group, and you're kind of like, how many people do they represent, is David Peterson at Las Virgenes Municipal Water District.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a few people who are there that just punch way above their weight, and Sonny's one of them. But he's not on it. He has not been as active on the climate action stuff as he has on some of the other stuff, which is too bad because he's greener than like everybody else there. And even Inland Empire, Utility Agency, Shivaji Desmukh, who's had a long history of being pretty green, not that good on this, because they look at it as someone's taking control from them. Like, hey, I want to do this project the way I want to do this project. Don't make me jump through these hoops to do it, as opposed to, no, it's for the greater good of why we're making you go through this additional review. But you can imagine from an engineering perspective, that's looked as slowing you down, or modifying the project. It's not going to be as cost effective or whatever the case may be. So anyways, I'll stop there unless anyone's got any questions.
All right. Any questions?
You can see why I wanted March being.
Absolutely.
I thought it was just to torture me, because it's like, oh, you get stuck with the Adele decision.
It can be both, Mark.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming out, Mark. It's good to get you back in here every month.
Yeah.
I have a question. Maybe
Sure.
it's really elementary, but since obviously the recent fires, I didn't know if there was anything like a position or any kind of statement or information that the Metropolitan Water District was taking or releasing. I've been asked a lot of questions around our city about our water.
Yeah, I was going to throw that in, but now that you asked the question, I decided against it. And, so Met's role on this was really helping out the little mutuals out in Altadena. And there's some good stories. Like they were there for them, providing backup generators and, trying to save their infrastructure and stuff like that. Because a lot of those little mutuals are kind of minor league, to say the least. And so here, and this is not wearing my Met hat, but, like other folks. So, any questions you have on the drinking water side, I'd be glad to answer them. A former NRDCer who worked with two of the other people in the room here, Gina Solomon, who's now at UCSF. She did some great work after the campfire to really look at what happens to water quality and the infrastructure when you burn an entire community. And it's pretty scary stuff, and it's really the volatile organic compounds, benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, those sorts of things, also methylene chloride. That, between methylene chloride would be you're burning a PVC pipe that's delivering your water to your home, or you're burning a HDPE pipe of some sort. And then the other stuff is just because you lose water pressure, and then those contaminants go from the air into the water. Pretty crazy stuff, but it's pretty horrible. And so it makes you realize when we have these pressurized systems and we lose the pressure, and the fires are community-wide fires, urban fires, that the drinking water systems are very vulnerable. And it's something that I think was completely underestimated until that campfire. And it doesn't mean other people didn't work on it, but it's like that really knocked it home for a lot of people. So the last thing I'll just say is, I'm sitting on the Blue Ribbon Commission for the county, and that's Lindsay Horvath, Supervisor Horvath, put that together. I don't know, there's like 20 of us on there or something like that. So it's a little bigger than I like for doing anything, but there's some really, really good people. It's chaired by Matt Peterson, who many people know, who used to be on this commission, right? And he runs LA Clean Tech Incubator. He was Garcetti's first chief sustainability officer. And then the vice chair is Fran Pavley, who needs no introduction. And so that's good. And it's also with UCLA. And so there's a lot of folks, especially in the Luskin School and my old job running Sustainable LA Grand Challenge, that are involved in it. It seems like Luskin's more of a UCLA lead than anything else. But I'll tell you, one of the things that's coolest is Sanjay Mahanti in civil engineering has a big grant working with Harvard and some other folks to do soil testing, because the feds basically said, you can rot in hell and we're not going to do any soil testing for you after we scrape your property. Thank you, FEMA and Trump administration. And, but they have money to do 1,200 samples on soil for contamination. Now, that's 1,200, that's not going to cover 1,200 sites, that's 1,200 samples. It's better than nothing, which is kind of where we were before. And so it was a significant amount of money. And whether the state adds to that, God only knows, but I know a lot of people are pushing for it. So last thing I'll say about the commission, we have our first meeting this Friday and all day Saturday. And so I'll know a lot better about that. The things that are super concerning is that there was a similar sort of thing that was put together informally with City of LA that was chaired by Mary Nichols and Jonathan Parfrey, the head of Climate Resolve. And it dissolved in 2 weeks because the city basically had no mechanism to take our recommendations and make sure they happen. And so people like Mary are like, I'm not working on this. I'm not going to do this just for naval contemplation, here's a document. So, we cranked out a document, largely Mary and Jonathan and 2 weeks. The first draft didn't even have water in it, so I bitched and added a water section. So that's now out there and will sort of serve as a first step on this this Blue Ribbon Commission. But let's be honest, if you don't have the county working with the city, this is going to fail. It's 100% certain that it's going to fail. And that is a legitimate concern that we should all have. And all of us as Santa Monicans, you know, I don't know about you, I've lived here for most of my life. And, you know, to me, Palisades and Santa Monica, we've been joined at the hip since birth, right? And so, you know, it works for Santa Monica if it works for the Palisades, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, oh, last thing about that is if anyone's got any recommendations, you know, and I'd be glad to come back during a Met Day or whatever, because we have basically 90 days to deliver something of value. So I can come back in 2 months or whatever, or, you know, and talk about that and Met, since I think I come here every other month, right? And you know, get some feedback from you on maybe how to strengthen the document. Would I think be really good to hear.
What's the specific charge for the Blue Ribbon Commission?
It's so freaking broad, dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that's a big
the
concern.
biggest problem.
Well, we'll know a lot more after we meet. Because one of the things that Matt asked is, what do you see as success in us producing in 90 days? And, you know, I mean, I do think a roadmap on how to get there. But the question is how much detail. You can imagine just on, you know, electrification alone, you know, that could be 10 pages, right? And so if you do the same thing for water and for electricity, you know, you're going to have a 100-page document in no time flat.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to care about a 100-page document.
And are you guys going into like rebuilding? Like maybe we don't want to rebuild along PCH and things like that, or you don't get that fine-grained? You're more about resilience.
I think that's TBD, but I will tell you that someone in leadership anonymously asked me over the weekend, would you be willing to deal with the issue of no septics on PCH? And I'm like, if you only knew the history, me and septics in Malibu.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm already hated because they have the treatment plant in the Civic Center for this exact reason. But the reality is, I mean, you see the vulnerability. My God, there's 3 miles straight where you just have septic systems that right into the bay, you know, and there's, you know, a sewer would make a hell of a lot more sense. And I would argue that you can't say it's growth inducing because there's nowhere to grow there, right? There's just basically PCH and the homes on the beach, and that's it. There's nowhere else to put anything. So, but I don't know. I said I wouldn't touch it unless Malibu wanted us to. But if this is going to be a fight with Malibu on sewering, forget it. Not worth anybody's time.
Got it.
It's roadmap for whom? Is this going to be for things the city of LA?
You have to use the microphone.
Oh,
yeah. So it's a roadmap for whom? I mean, presumably the county, but
City
also
and
and for the city as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's the fear. How do you do? You know, it's said as a roadmap for the county. Last I checked, the city is in the county, and so, but it doesn't work unless the city's on board. And I can tell you that the initial invitation included the city, and the city would have none of it. They didn't want anything to do with it. And a lot of them you can though, you know. So last I checked, there's only one county public health as an example. So anything that's public health oriented is a county thing. So I mean, it really depends on what it is. But you're right on things like building codes and, you know, and what are you going to do with your water infrastructure or your electrical infrastructure? Are you going to make sure that there's no gas going back? You know, all those things that are near and dear to everyone on this committee. You know, there's, as I'm sure you're aware of, there's a push of like, let's just build back as soon as humanly possible, throw environmental laws out the window, And, let's make it exactly how it was, in no time flat. Oh,
Yeah.
and by the way, let's get rid of the coastal commission along the way just because
Yeah.
we don't like them.
Yeah.
Which is like, are you kidding me?
So to get back to your thing, we'd love to, if you could bring something from that committee
glad to.
back, and we'd love to see it. And,
Okay.
oh, yeah. Thank you, Mark.
You got it.
Can I just add one piece too?
Yeah.
Just because you did mention, someone asked a question about water supply, and you mentioned obviously the pressure situation.
Yeah.
I did want to say that the city of Santa Monica is our own water utility, and they were able to, in anticipation of that moment, were able to completely separate our municipal water supply from the
DWP.
LADWP, far too many acronyms and new acronyms to me in the last month. And so that is beneficial that our water supply did.
That information I know, and I've had a lot of people ask me that.
Yes.
I think it would be excellent if we put some kind of statement out there that brought some comfort to residents. I've heard so many people say, well, after that LA Times article came out yesterday or the day before about carcinogens, everyone's like, what's going on in Santa Monica? I'm like, actually, we should be really proud of Santa Monica's water infrastructure right now. And that's kind of the one glimmer of hope in a lot of chaos and destruction, but for the environment. But I think some kind of public information messaging or social media post would be really beneficial to the community.
That's great feedback. Thank you.
I will say, and I'm going to push for it, and I did talk to Sunny about it a month ago, the lack of interconnectivity between the systems, and there's a difference between the drinking water distribution and the fact that we have two huge reservoirs that are not connected to the City of LA system that could have been helpful. Doesn't mean that they would have made any difference whatsoever on January 7th. I'm a firm believer that, as was stated earlier, I don't care what happened. To me, it's like, as long as there was an ignition, it was going to be a disaster because of the,
Wind speed.
0.17 inches of rain in 8 months and
Yep.
80-mile-per-hour winds. There was nothing anybody could do with no aerial support. And so, but building for the future, we need connectivity between systems, and we don't have that. And obviously Santa Monica has two big reservoirs that, could be helpful in those sorts of situations if done properly.
Yes.
Great.
So, alrighty.
All right. Well, thank you.
You got it.
If you're amenable,
Mhm.
we were going to swap the order of presentations under the safety element, just because we were talking about fire impact. We were going to have
Yeah.
Lindsay go, and then we'll come back to the safety element.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Lindsay Collins, Chief Resilience Officer for Office of Emergency Management. During the Palisades fire, I served as the Emergency Operations Center Director for the entire period, and then have been attempting to spearhead our recovery efforts. So tonight, just wanted to give an overview of the different resources that are available to learn about the environmental health impacts of the fire.
Oh, shoot. Hello again. I was like, I project pretty well too. Hello.
I heard it in the low levels, but it wasn't directly.
I'm back. Okay. Lindsay Call, Chief Resilience Officer, City of Santa Monica, Office of Emergency Management, served as the Emergency Operations Center Director for the entire Palisades Fire event, spearheading our entire city's response to the event. So tonight, just want to give a brief overview on the work we're doing to partner with the many different agencies across the city who are involved in the recovery, especially focused on environmental health, and where you find what information, because there's a lot out there and it's sometimes hidden. So what is Santa Monica's scope? So just to be clear, LA County Department of Public Health serves as Santa Monica's Public Health and Environmental Health Authority. Santa Monica is not in charge of those that work, right? Just similar to, we were talking about bubonic plague earlier. Just as they were, and that is back in the day my specialty. So, so just like public health is our authority when it comes to epidemiology and the control of infectious diseases, they are also the oversight body of environmental health matters. So what our role as the city agencies is to make sure we're obtaining correct information and disseminating that information to the public on environmental impacts and what monitoring is being done. We're also very much leaning forward and advocating for activities related to environmental health that support our recovery for the disaster and for just regional environmental health issues. Then we're taking that information and we're implementing it into city operational issues. So making sure that our decision making is using the best science that's out there to protect the safety of our staff, protecting the safety and health of the community, and making sure that we're doing all of these activities in alignment with the region. So there is a lot of information out there, a lot of agencies involved, a lot of acronyms. So we're trying to make sure that you have one starting point for this information. So on our city's website, we have the Palisades Fire page, and we have put the tab that says ocean, water, beach conditions is a really good one-stop shop for questions related to that. And then we have a tab that says environmental health advisories and testing with the different websites for all of the different resources that have information and testing results related to those. And there's other stuff on there too, like our local emergency order and other recovery resources. Okay, so our starting point is the County Department of Public Health. Their fire safety and health information has current health advisories. The general health advisory does not apply to Santa Monica. It has its post-fire air, soil, and water assessment plan, FAQs, resources for the burn area and outside the burn area, and their YouTube virtual town hall recording, which was great. If you haven't had the opportunity to review that, definitely worth a watch. Okay. One of the new highlights that's come out from DPH is this post-fire air, soil, and water assessment plan. It breaks it down, all of those different categories that are listed below the title. It has who is doing what testing, the locations that it's doing it, and then as those results become publicly available, they have a results button that you can go directly to that location. I will say that it is sparsely populated on results currently, but a lot of those results are taking time. For example, ocean water tasting can take, a week to 2 weeks to get those results. So this is brand new as of last week, and I expect that results will continue to populate as the days progress. Ocean and beach conditions, this is a combination of lots of agencies that love the beach and water. LA County Department of Public Health, Beaches and Harbor, and the LA Regional Water Quality Board. The website that's on the screen is from Beaches and Harbor and is a really great resource, especially for lay folks who just want to know, is the beach safe? What is the black stuff that's washing up on the beach? What should I be concerned about? So this is a great resource as well. Oh, sorry. Doing a picture, okay. Department of Public Health issues the ocean water warnings and advisories. They have their own website for this. They issue their beach grades as well. And they have two different categories of warnings and advisories on their website. So they have been doing a better job specifying what is wildfire related and what is non-wildfire related. So for example, they have a fire-related ocean water advisory from Las Flores to Santa Monica State Beach, which is north of the city's line. The non-fire related ocean water warning, because you see there's yellow dots all up and down the coast, that is non-fire related and was issued after the rain. They also are posting rain advisories on this website. And of course, they continue to say to avoid water contact by the storm drains, especially after rain events. That's been an overarching message throughout this. We've talked about LADWP and their water advisories. They have a new, everybody has been putting out new websites. Everybody's been hearing the public feedback that's been coming. They have a do not drink notice and map on their website, bottled water distribution sites, and they have a new restoration progress dashboard detailing where they're at and what stages still are to come. So this is the map of the general LADWP water notice, and then the highlighted box are the 3 streets that are specifically impacted in Santa Monica. Sonny did a great job on a video. He's done town halls, really, participated in the NOMA meeting, really emphasizing what streets are impacted, explaining the water system to Santa Monica residents. So he's done a lot of work in that regard. This is their new restoration dashboard with a story map detailing every single step to restore the water in the Palisades area. Right now, some of these steps happen together. They're not just one at a time. So right now, we're kind of at step 5 to 8, where they're testing, making repairs, tweaking, testing, making repairs, tweaking, etc., over and over again. And I will say Santa Monica has been in coordination with LADWP on that effort, making sure that we're supporting their testing process, fleshing out things, etc. So there's been really good coordination between the two. Okay, next up, air quality, because everything has its own agency, everybody. South Coast AQMD handles all of the air quality testing, and they have the most results posted of any agency. So that is their website. You can look and see they've done mobile monitoring, and then they've also are going to start stationary monitoring at specific locations and post the results. And you can see kind of the baseline testing information, as well as, I think it's by the hour, what the readings are, which is pretty impressive. And then, last but not least, federal and private wildfire debris removal. So to safely clean up the fire burn areas and transport hazardous materials to its final destination, and then clean up the rest of the debris on the sites. The good news is the EPA has done a lot of work very quickly. It is near completion of phase 1 for the hazardous debris removal. They only have 7-8% of commercial parcels pending. All of the other work has been done, and they have less than 1% of residential parcels pending. We are moving into phase 2 by either it's done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering or private contractors. So the Corps is done if people don't want to pay out of pocket for the debris removal, but then they have to get in a queue of all the other people who lost their homes. But once phase 1 is done, private contractors can move forward. The recoverylacounty.gov website has a good synopsis of this entire process on their website. So phase 1, EPA has a very robust story map detailing the progress of every parcel and what phase it's at. If a private disregard that. So again, blue and purple is a positive sign. This is the Army Corps of Engineers dashboard as well. You can look up individual parcels on that. ROE is a request or rights of entry that the resident has to sign to allow the Corps to assess their property and complete the work that's being done there. The blue parcels are those that are in progress with the contractor. So that resident has to make sure that that ROE is signed and posted at their property before the Corps begins their work. So this is all in the works, but we're hoping to start it fairly quickly as we move forward. So that's a lot of information. So as the main liaison of all this response and recovery efforts, it's just we are trying to make sense of the very robust multi-agency response and recovery work that's being done, and share the resources that have been validated and are credible with the public. In alignment with that, we are hosting a virtual town hall on Wednesday. So if you want to see more of me, Wednesday night, 7 p.m., we'll be doing a virtual Zoom meeting. Registration is required. And we will have representatives from FEMA focused on individual assistance for Santa Monica residents that were impacted by the evacuation orders. The Small Business Administration focused on impacts to businesses, economic injury, even if they didn't sustain damage. And then we will have LA County Department of Public Health, Beaches and Harbor, and city agencies available to answer questions. So, in conclusion, we are not doing any of the testing ourselves. We are reliant on our partners, but we are strongly advocating to make sure that things are done in the appropriate way so that we can make the best decisions operationally for our community and for our staff population. And so appreciate everybody working together in that advocacy, and happy to take questions before I turn it to Rachel for her amazing safety element presentation.
All right. Thanks, Lindsay. Any questions from commissioners?
Can we get this presentation? Is it
Yeah.
possible? Yeah, some of it I just couldn't read. And then my other question is, what if have you come across a point where county and Santa Monica aren't aligned, or there's a division in obviously schools of thought or opinions? And in that case, are you allowed to speak out about that or share with that, where there's kind of a fork in the road?
Yes. I've said no before to, hey, could we do this activity in Santa Monica, and in coordination with other city leaders evaluated and said no politely, and that activity did not proceed in Santa Monica, and that was good for everybody. And then just in general, Shannon and I have been looking at the body of work of, this is not our first wildfire at LA County. This is not our first wildfire in the United States or the world. And so looking at the other bodies of work and lessons learned and testing that done there and saying, what are the similarities and differences? And we're there to ask hard questions of our partners. Can't tell you how many emails I've been on and meetings I've been on with Beaches and Harbor and the Water Quality Board. And they've been tremendous partners and really listening to our community's concerns. And we've been offering them our testing locations. Hey, we would love for you to test at this location and this location. Can you come and do that? We are wanting to have the specific sites where you are performing sand and sediment testing. Can you make that publicly available? And working towards those goals. So there's, it's more of a collaborative relationship, but we have said no before. And, we're in this for the best interest of our community.
Great. Thank you. Other questions? Judy?
Those of us who have another meeting at that same time able to go back and watch what happened in our town hall?
I'm sure we can record it and post it on our YouTube channel. Yeah.
It's so important.
I know. Yes.
Because there's so many jurisdictions, especially in the beach area. I mean, it's really overwhelming to even name them all. Who kind of is in charge of the debris and what's going on the beach? Is there somebody who's like solely at the top of the chain of command?
Depends if it's the sand or the water. I would say it is.
Let's just say
I would say it's LA County Department of Public Health. It's kind of the overarching coordinating body. And then ocean water testing. The testing is really being done by LA Regional Water Quality Board. And then similar to us, Beaches and Harbor is doing their best at communicating this information to the general public, as well as operationalizing it.
So, like, who? I'm just trying because I'm curious. I don't know. Is it Santa Monica's responsibility or is it county's responsibility to kind of make sure that what's on the sand is addressed when it comes to debris or anything that's coming down Chautauqua? Or like, who's kind of leading that charge on those conversations?
We both are. I think it's in partnership. So, and there's a difference right now if you look at Santa Monica beaches versus Venice beaches on the amount of sediment that's on the two. We've followed our normal post-storm debris cleanup procedures once we validated that the sediment was non-hazardous or non-toxic to humans and it was safe to do so. And so we went forward with that post-storm cleanup activities. But like the storm drains, we took an additional step to create berms around our storm drains to prevent the debris from going back into the ocean and then just coming right back up. LA did not do that, but we're working in coordination with them to figure out what we are doing with that storm drain and all of the debris in there, because that is a very complicated answer at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And costly.
Has anybody tested the stuff like that? So, Montana drain, for instance, it looks like a swimming pool of ash.
Yeah.
I mean,
So testing should be done by the LA Regional Water Quality Board, either tomorrow to Thursday. We anticipate that they'll come out, and that was at the urging of Santa Monica.
and when you say sediment testing, is that just the sand? Or are you testing the debris that's washing on the sand? Do you know, like?
So they will be, there's a, sorry for scrolling like this. So they have a good definition of what like the sediment is on Beaches and Harbors website. So they are performing sediment testing, which is the black stuff, the black debris on the beach, but they are also performing just general sand testing. So that is under the work of the LA Regional Water Quality Board.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Like, one of the things I think has been super helpful is for everyone to start to use the same language for the things that we're talking about. So the testing is happening for 3 areas. There is water, sand, and sediment. And sediment is what's being used for this, as Lindsay just said. But I think that's helpful because people were calling it sludge, people were calling it a whole slew of things, right? So we will be able to communicate most clearly if everyone's using the same terminology. So this picture on the bottom right, that is a picture of sediment. And that sediment can come this way, or it can come as you're seeing it on the wave patterns on the shoreline. And then there's sand, which you are familiar with, you live in Santa Monica, and then there's water.
Yeah, and
I thought that was helpful differentiation for me.
And preliminary testing is showing very positive results, where they have been able to relax some of the ocean water restrictions before it rained. But the testing is ongoing. So at first they were testing 12 different sites from the top of the fire line all the way to Dockweiler. Because they were encouraged by those results, they shrunk it to fewer testing sites. Now they're expanding it again. But it's evolving as we're learning and we are seeing the data. I'm not doing the testing myself, but as they are seeing the data, making educated decisions based on what results they're identifying.
I doubt it. Yeah. Question.
So you mentioned for air testing, given that the app website specifically says that they're not getting information out regarding ash. Did you see fires response to AQI? Is there a way for average citizens in Santa Monica to access information?
So I would recommend going to this website specifically, and so it's aqmd.gov 2025-wildfire-response. It's different than the normal monitor air quality in a wildfire website that we provide. And it does have the specific testing levels for the air toxic metals and VOCs that people are most concerned about. So again, I'm an infectious disease person, so this is not my wheelhouse. But I think that they've been hearing the public's concerns and putting more information related to air quality on this website. So I would check it again instead of just referring to like what we normally promote during wildfire smoke events. Sorry for the non-answer. If anybody has questions about anthrax, I'm here to assist.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay.
Okay.
Okay. Rachel, save the best for last.
Not really.
Hello, everybody. Rachel Kwok, environmental planner from the safety, here to present the safety element tonight. This was an adopted element of our general plan. So I think I might have been here maybe last year, discussing what the safety element is, but just to provide some brief background on this. The safety element is a mandatory component of our general plan. So if you don't know what our general plan is, it's basically the blueprint for the city. So it's composed of 7 required elements. The safety element is a required element. We already have the land use and circulation element that you probably heard a lot of, and then as well as the housing element. So the safety element is just one of this mandatory 7 elements of the general plan. So we are updating the safety element because the last time we updated the safety element was in 1995, quite a long time ago. And so as you can imagine, there's been a lot of things that have happened since 1995. We have new Santa Monica fault zones. We also have new FEMA flood zones, as well as what we're calling climate change, you guys might have heard of. So believe it or not, the 1995 safety element did not have any discussion on climate change effects, including wildfires. So there's also a need to update the safety element because we have a lot of updated new recent city plans that we want to make sure we're in alignment with, including the climate action plan, the housing element, as well as the local hazard mitigation plan that Lindsay is currently working on. And I'll discuss that in a minute. But also there's also some state requirements that requires us to update the safety element, including the state mandatory requirement that we address climate change as well as extreme heat. And then as we saw during the Palisades fire, there is a requirement to identify evacuation routes as well as areas where there's only one way in and one way out. And we saw that was an issue during the Palisades fire. So the safety element is required to address those issues. I mentioned the local hazard mitigation plan because we have been working, thank you very much, Lindsay, in coordination with Lindsay and her team to make sure that the safety element and the local hazard mitigation plan are in sync with each other. The difference between the two is that the safety element, as I mentioned, is a mandatory requirement of the state law. So it is required to address vulnerability and risks in the natural and built environment. And the requirement is generally we have to update every 8 years. I want to emphasize that it is not an emergency operations plan. We are not looking for the safety element to tell us what to do during an emergency or how to evacuate. It is a guiding document. And so similarly, the local hazard mitigation plan is also a mitigation plan. It's not an emergency operations plan. There are other plans in place for that. The local hazard mitigation plan is required to qualify for funding from FEMA, and that's more of a living document because there is a requirement to update that every 5 years. So the update for that is currently in process. The safety element addresses, as I mentioned, things in the natural and built environment. So when we talk about the natural environment, we're talking about things like seismic risks, like earthquakes and faults. We're also talking about climate change, flooding, and soils issue, like we talked about the Palisades Bluffs, any potential for landslides and soil failures. And then we also address things in the urban built environment that could be a hazard, including urban fires, hazardous waste materials and hazardous sites, as well as airport-related hazards. So just to go over what's in the safety element, we first addressed geological and seismic hazards. I mentioned steep slopes and landslides. This is a picture of the Palisades Bluffs where we did mitigation just a year ago because there was a piece of the bluffs that was indicating that it was failing. And so some of the things that the safety element does is we have in there a number of actions to ensure that we're regularly monitoring the bluffs and that we would be implementing stabilization measures. The Public Works actively does this. They recently completed a survey to show that there will be stabilization measures that will be necessary periodically to maintain the integrity of the bluffs. Also, whenever a project is developed, they are required, whenever they pull a building permit, they are required to provide what we call a geotechnical study. And so that geotechnical study just analyzes the project site and makes sure that the project doesn't have any kind of geological stability issues. And they're required to do this study in accordance with the city's geotechnical guidelines. Those guidelines haven't been updated since 2010. We are in the middle of updating those. So the safety element ensures that we are updating these guidelines at least every 8 years so that we make sure that all of our buildings are on top of our current building codes and current best practice standards for design. And also the safety element makes sure that we continue prohibiting infiltration of runoff near the bluffs. We try to keep the bluffs. We have that area called the area of non-infiltration zone to protect the bluffs because if you have too much water going into the bluffs, it causes stability issues. And there's also an aquifer protection zone around that area. So we would continue to do those. Last time we were here, we talked about the earthquake fault zone. So the Santa Monica fault zone runs approximately in the north of Montana area and the Wilmot area. It kind of crosses through the city in the northern portion of the city. This fault zone was designated in 2018, and so if you are in that fault zone, you have to do a fault study, and that's to make sure that we are not building buildings right across the giant fault. To date, there's been more than 20 fault studies that have been done, and we have yet to find evidence of an active fault. That doesn't mean that the fault is not there. We just haven't found exactly where the trace of that fault is. That being said, just because we haven't found the presence of an active fault, that doesn't mean that the city is not at risk to an earthquake. If you guys all read the news, which we all do, we are long overdue for an earthquake. There is a 90-something% chance, probably higher than 93. I think this data is about a couple years old, that we will have an earthquake of magnitude of 6.7 or higher within the next 30 years. So Santa Monica has a really active seismic retrofit program. We have been pretty successful in making sure that a lot of our older buildings are unreinforced masonry buildings are seismically retrofitted. I think we're partway through the seismic retrofit program, and so we're still continuing to implement this, and so we would continue the seismic retrofit program. We are also, the safety element also makes sure we prioritize seismic retrofits in public infrastructure as part of our CIP program, like making sure that our water lines, particularly the ones that go near our fault zone, are prioritized in terms of seismic retrofits. And then also our water reservoirs. And so Sunny, has already put in some bids to make sure that a lot of our reservoirs are going to be seismically retrofitted so that, it could withstand strong earthquakes. The city also has a liquefaction zone. So if you don't know what liquefaction is, it's basically when you have loose soil, and during an earthquake, when it shakes, it loosens and it basically collapses. And this usually happens when the groundwater table is high. And so we do have areas of liquefaction in the coastal part of the city, as well as a small portion in the Bergamo area. So we would continue to require that new buildings in these liquefaction zones are building up to standard. They would be required to prepare geotechnical reports that address liquefaction risks. And I mentioned the geotechnical guidelines update at least every 8 years before. So in terms of flooding, we have a FEMA flood zone basically concentrated on the coastal area of the city. So what it means to be in a 100-year flood zone just means that you have about a 26% chance of risk of flooding over the course of a 30-year mortgage. And so there's about approximately 132 parcels located in these FEMA flood zones. If you're in this flood zone, you are required to purchase flood insurance. And then also, there might be different building code standards if you are building within these flood zones. One of the things that the safety element does is it not only within the flood zone, but outside of the flood zone, we are trying to prioritize areas where we could see large pockets of localized flooding. Perhaps our storm drainage infrastructure isn't great there, so we're trying to prioritize those locations for storm drainage improvements. And for tsunamis, the city has, of course, we're coastal, so we are at risk of a tsunami. There's really 3 types of tsunami, if you guys are not aware of. There's the local, regional, and distant. Local means we have less than an hour notice, and so that is the most dangerous kind of tsunami. And then the regional has about 1 to 3 hour notice before it comes to shore, and then distant means that we have more than 3 hours before it comes to shore. And there's about 220 something parcels within the tsunami zone. One of the things that the safety element calls for is that we're looking at the potential installation of warning sirens along the coastal locations, just in case the tsunami does happen, people are alerted and they could run inland. And we also have some dams and reservoirs that, if they broke, it could cause significant flooding. We have 2 reservoirs. One is the Stone Canyon Reservoir, which is actually in the city of LA, but it's owned by us. The second reservoir is the Riviera Reservoir, which is just near the golf course in the Santa Monica Canyons area. And you can see in the purple, the Riviera Reservoir, if it did break, it wouldn't really affect us. It would just kind of go along the golf course and in the canyon area. However, if the Stone Canyon Reservoir broke, depending on the level of failure, we could see upwards of 1 to 10 feet of flooding, mostly in the eastern portion of the city. And so the safety element, we're making sure that these reservoirs are seismically upgraded, as I mentioned, just in case that if there is an earthquake, they could withstand this earth shaking. And so one of the things, of course, is fire that has been, of course, a recent occurrence, and we all know too well about. So when we first did this safety element, I think it's one thing to talk about wildfires and the dangers there. It's another to actually see it happen and see it unfold before your eyes. When we did the safety element, we saw the Palisades area, it's all to the north. That's all very high fire severity zone, as you can see here in this map. But however, we all know that fires don't follow borders and city borders. They could easily jump across borders and city lines. So a lot of people have been asking, how are wildfire zones designated? There's 3 levels: moderate, high, and very high. The area, as I said, to the north, which was where the Palisades fire started, was the very high fire zone. We don't have any wildfire zones in the city. But as I mentioned, we certainly came pretty close to these fires. The fire zones are determined by the state. They use a scientific-based model. There's 2 key elements that get fed into this model. It's really probability and expected fire behavior. So when they use this model, they look at the land type. So if it's a wildland versus if it's a non-wildland. And the way to determine zones for wildland is they consider things like fire history, flame length, the terrain of the area, as well as the history of fires over a 50-year period in that area, as well as the local weather. For more urban areas, non-wildland areas, they consider things also like terrain, but what the vegetation cover is like in that area, the potential for blowing embers, as we saw the 80-mile-per-hour winds blowing embers over a mile, was not something that was really anticipated. They also consider proximity to wildland, fire history, as well as the fire hazard in these areas. So as I mentioned, this was the evacuation area. We saw that the Palisades fire spread rapidly, and a lot of it spread to the north where the fire zones are. However, it did spread, the northern portion of the city did get evacuated because there was that potential to jump and spread across to the south. We experienced citywide smoke and ash effects. Before the Palisades fire, the city had already had in its long-range fire strategic plan to plan for a new fire station in the northern portion of the city because of coverage reasons. Of course, that's still in our safety element action or recommended action. We also had in our safety element before the Palisades fire that we would encourage residents living within proximity of the wildfire zone to implement safe fire practices. As I said before, because we are not in the fire zone, there is not a requirement for the properties to implement safe fire practices or fire-resistant design. However, in light of the fires, we've talked with our partners in the fire department, OEM, and water department, and added a slew of new policies to address, kind of lessons learned to the safety element to make sure that we, are later on in the future that we are, prepared. So, in talking with our fire department, we have added these policies, one of which is to require that the areas north of San Vicente, while they are not in a designated fire zone, we would require them to have fire-resistant building design and materials. Also, we were keeping them, while a lot of people have said, what about defensible space? The issue with the defensible space is that these parcels are sometimes too close together and there's not a huge setbacks. And so we would still, however, want to encourage residents to implement safe fire practices, such as maintaining a native landscaping that's fire retardant and keeping their site, free of combustibles. We would also want to ensure that during red flag fire warnings that we will implement things like no burn warnings, no leaf blower bans, open flame bans to limit the potential for ignition. Also instituting active vegetation and debris management before and during high wind events, as well as collaborating with Caltrans on making sure their areas, the hillside areas, are also free of debris and combustible vegetation. Also ensuring that, we unfortunately saw a lot of people when they were evacuating in the Palisades fire, there was the traffic jams, people couldn't get around, couldn't evacuate because there were cars just parked on the roads. And so we would implement parking restrictions in the northern portion of the city when there are red flag days, just to make sure that there is adequate ingress and egress out if something did happen. Also, we talked about water. While we do have those reservoirs up there, we have talked to Senny, and we would try to identify additional water connections for use of reclaimed water for firefighting purposes. There are currently 4 connections to using reclaimed water. Fortunately, none of those are in the northern portion of the city. So we would look to add another connection point. And ensuring that the city reservoirs are adequately filled prior to the high wind events and during high fire conditions. We saw that the city of LA got a lot of negative feedback because of the reservoirs. And, while they may not have made a big difference, I think just having that is better insurance to the public as well. Urban fires are not necessarily a big issue here in the city. We receive less than 3% of our Santa Monica Fire Department calls are related to urban fires. Urban fires are generally dependent on a number of factors, such as what is the building used for, the size of the building, the age of the building, whether or not it has built-in fire protections. However, we would still continue to make sure that we would implement regular updates of the fire code, as well as update our standards of cover study. And then since we have a lot of new housing development, this fire department is considering adding a development impact fee on new development to address increases in fire demand. Actually, I want to also go back to the wildfire zones. Just for your information, the word is that the state is actually going to be releasing new fire zone maps sometime soon in the next few weeks, I think March 24th. Our fire department does not think that will change the designation in our area, but should that happen, we will have to amend our safety element and definitely a lot of our building code requirements to address that if we are designated as a fire zone. And then next topic is hazardous materials. We are a very urban city, but we do have history of past uses that have resulted in hazardous soil or groundwater contamination. Most of it is in the industrial conservation area and the Bergamot area, as well as the airport land. This map here shows the sites that we know of that has had or have contamination, but there are many others that we might not know about. So one thing that the safety element does is that we are requiring that if you're digging underground, particularly for housing development, if you're digging, that you do a environmental site assessment, which is testing the soil or doing a database research and testing the soil if necessary to make sure that your site is not contaminated, because we don't want to be putting new residential uses on top of a hazardous site. And then also climate change. One of the new requirements, as I mentioned, is addressing extreme heat. In the safety element, we saw that, in the last few years, we've seen temperature breaking record temperatures here. While the city is less affected than the rest of the LA region because we are nearer to the coast, that being said, because we are coastal, we're not as hot. Many of our households do not have AC. So one of the things that we are looking that we added to the safety element is the action to prepare an extreme heat action plan, including potentially adding cooling requirements when new residential units are built. Statewide, there are heating requirements. There isn't any potential cooling requirements. So this is something that the safety element adds. And then the safety element also addresses drought. Where we had the significant atmospheric rivers that pulled us out of the drought in 2022, we did experience almost a 10-year drought. And so there's fluctuations in the water supply. And so safety element continues a lot of the great stuff that the city already is doing, including the our water self-sufficiency projects and program. We would also want to make sure that a lot of our water infrastructure is seismically retrofitted and, addresses adequate fire flow and regular fire demand requirements. I know we talked about that earlier, so I'm not going to go into detail on this. And then also the safety element addresses extreme precipitation. We saw more than 30 atmospheric rivers a couple years ago. And so while we don't know exactly how climate change will affect atmospheric rivers, it will lead to increase. They think that by 40%. As I mentioned, we want to make sure that our stormwater system can adequately address these big swings in extreme precipitation. And then the next thing that the safety element does is we added in new maps to look at sea level rise in accordance with the newest guidance that was produced by the California Ocean Protection Council. And so you'll see that based on the latest data and the modeling, we can experience a rise of about 6 feet by 2100 if it was a high emission scenario. And so Santa Monica is, we are very active in, a lot of our efforts to address sea level rise, including the Santa Monica Dunes project, which the city approved, or which the city council approved, and is, we already did phase 1 and phase 2 that will help with the sea level rise strategies, as well as the local coastal program is underway, and that will identify more sea level rise strategies. And lastly, the thing that the last issue that the safety element addresses is airport hazards. In terms of aircraft incidents, Santa Monica Airport experiences about, 1 on average every year. Between the 30-year period, 1993 and 2023, there was a total of 33 accidents. We also operate some of the most strictest noise ordinance program in the country, and so we have a Fly Neighborly program resulting in the lowest noise complaints levels in 2022. One of the big things that is an issue is underground soil and groundwater contamination. That's probably the biggest thing that is at the airport that we needed to consider. And then also we just want to note here that the safety element also was recently revised to make sure that we reflect the council direction about the airport conversion project. And then lastly, there's a big discussion in the safety element that talks about disaster preparedness, emergency response, and recovery. All of this is done, it's a coordinated effort between various departments and agencies, including Lindsay's Office of Emergency Management, the fire and police departments, Public Works, and other relevant agencies, as we saw, here in the Palisades fire. Office of Emergency Management also operates the CERT training program, the Community Emergency Response Team training program, which is free to city residents, employees. So if you have an opportunity to sign up, I recommend signing up for that. We also have alert systems such as SM Alerts and other kind of county-wide alert systems. We also have identified essential facilities in the safety element. I just want to note here, essential facilities are basically facilities we have identified as being vital in the event of a natural disaster or a disaster happening. And so as part of the safety element, we recently revised the building code to make sure it lists City Hall East as an essential facility and not the old City Hall, historic City Hall, since the old historic City Hall doesn't have the improvements necessary to function as an essential facility. And we've also identified potential emergency shelters. Again, the type of emergency shelters will be situational. Really what shelters are selected will depend on the number of people that are in need of a shelter. We saw that with the Palisades fire, that there were thousands of people needing a shelter, so it depends on the capacity, it depends on the location relative to the impact area. We want to make sure that the shelter is relatively close so that people could get to the area, but that it is also a safe shelter facility. And so this list that we've identified is not exhaustive, is merely an example of which ones could be utilized, and not all of them would be open during a disaster. We've also identified potential evacuation routes as required by state law. And I think you kind of see here the red arrows going down are the evacuation routes for the wildfires. And you see they're all heading away from basically the wildfire zones and the steep hillside areas. And then the tsunami ones, we just want people to go inland. And so get away from the shore as much as possible. And then the purple you'll see is the dam and flooding from if the dam from the Stone Canyon Reservoir was to break. Those are the evacuation routes we've identified. And in terms of additional policies that was added for emergency response operations, I mentioned the parking restrictions. One of the things that we realized that needed to happen was that when the fires happened, we needed to call vendors and providers that provided emergency services for emergency management and recovery operations. So the safety element adds this new policy, as well as identifying large capacity shelter facilities, which I mentioned, we just in Santa Monica, we are short on large capacity shelter facilities. When Palisades Fire happened, there was thousands of people, and it was hard to hold a lot of people, in the city of Santa Monica. Also, in talking with our Water Resources Division, making sure that, we have a redundant backup power supply system, making sure that in an event that our water energy source somehow failed, that there is redundant backup power for these water treatment and supply facilities, and making sure that there's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week staffing for critical water and wastewater facilities, so that if disasters happened, that there is continued operations. And so I think that's the end of my presentation. Mm-hmm. Yep. Any questions? Yeah.
Any questions from commissioners? David.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. During the Palisades fire, portions of Santa Monica were designated, get out and get ready to get out. Who made those decisions?
Oh, I'm going to leave it to Lindsay. Thank you, Lindsay. She's like my little angel here.
So those decisions were made by our Emergency Operations Center. So it was a joint decision between myself, the police department, and the fire department, in coordination with CAL FIRE, CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 2 was the incident command team for the entire event, and then LA County also had a role. But from a local perspective, we make the decision if we want to do an evacuation order or warning zone. And so that information we were coming from CAL FIRE, coming from the field resources that were positioned on the southern edge of the fire, and then those decisions were made by the Emergency Operations Center.
Thank you.
Yeah. And not taken lightly.
Yeah.
Just because I have you here, just so I have a question, do we know how many residents were under mandatory evacuation in Santa Monica?
Yeah, so it was about, there was a period of about 2 days where it was close to 1,200 households for most of the fire event. It was north of San Vicente with approximately 900 households. And that's just evacuation order. The evacuation warning expanded. I think it was a total of about 1,500 households.
Great. Other questions? Okay. Thank you. everyone. And we're adjourned, I believe. Nope.
So we have administrative update. I would love to talk to each of you before you leave. If you could just come and talk to me to go over trainings that are necessary, please.
Hold on. But before you all start to feel like, oh gosh, I'm in trouble, there's actually one person who has all of theirs completed.
Yes, she gets the prize. Ashley, stand up and take a bow. Take a bow.
I was one of them.
I wanted to publicly share this with you because I could see you
I was
feeling
like,
like
oh,
you
no.
were like, no.
And this is just me trying to get everything organized. It is not a big deal. I do not need you, Ashley. Thank you.
No,
All right.
we're just really trying to stop getting ourselves.
Okay.
Now I'm getting the email notifications. That was enough to bust selling on it.
Yeah.
So just come see me.
Great. All right. So now we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.